Please welcome Lyric CEO and founder Andrew Kitchell in discussion with Skift Travel Tech editor Sean O'Neill.
So we've heard earlier today from Sonder, and we're going to hear in a moment from Domio. There's a lot of brands in this space, and now we're going to hear from Lyric. Andrew, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. Awesome event.
How does Lyric stand out among the crowd?
Sure. So look, I think what we're seeing realistically in the category is the emergence of a lot of really interesting brands. You're about to hear from Jay and Domio. You heard from Francis this morning. I think obviously we're seeing the proliferation of brands, and kind of all of us are probably designing a little differently and for potentially a different consumer set. But I will talk about, to answer this question, I'll kind of talk about Lyric's over-investments.
Okay.
Right? So we have three main over-investments that we make. Mm-hmm. The first is in quality.
Okay.
Right? So by quality, what I mean when I say that is we spend a lot of time, care, and realistically capital creating really high quality spaces. When we go into create a space, we have custom wallpapers for each individual space. We custom design furniture. We find local artists within the community who we think represent or help us tell a modern local narrative about the space. We'll go find partnerships within the community that help us tell that story even better. So quality is something hopefully you can see in the photos. I think certainly.
Can I jump in here? So
yeah.
I live in the Philadelphia area right now. I commute up to New York, and I put up some relatives in the Walnut in
Awesome.
Philadelphia. Yeah. And so it's a local artist who is a photographer, is located on the walls.
Yep.
And so that is kind of what you mean by the design element, right?
Exactly.
So that's it's one of the.
Yes, right. So the goal is, and when we launched the Walnut, we had a bunch of people from the city of Philadelphia come in, and I think the most magic thing that they shared was, you captured our story. Mm-hmm. You captured our story, right? So I think from a design perspective, over-investment in design, for those who are coming to visit us tonight at 70 Pine, hopefully you'll see that and feel that when you walk into the room. Over-investment number two, technology.
Okay.
Right? So Lyric actually started from a foundation of data and software. And whereas we made early over-investments in kind of revenue management and figuring out how to use revenue management to inform which investments we should make, that software stack now extends through the guest experience. It's a little bit behind the scenes, right? Like I actually don't believe that, well, I will speak for myself. I still do not want to walk into a room and feel hit in the face with technology.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I have all the technology I want on my wrist and in my pocket. Mm-hmm. So therefore, we think about technology more as enabling seamless operations, seamless access, et cetera. And Lyric not only builds software, we sell software, right?
Okay.
It's an aspect of our business.
And so like revenue management is one of the software.
Yeah, exactly,
okay.
exactly.
Okay.
And then the third thing we invest in, and this is, can be a dangerous word, but we invest in community, right? And by that I mean at the Walnut, we are about to move into a fourth floor of that building.
Okay.
But it's, I think, 26, 27-story building. We're obviously interacting with residents. Mm-hmm. So when we think about designing and kind of taking care of not only our guests, we also think about taking care of the residents within the building. How do we interact with them? And of course, our guests spill out into the community. So how do we think about that involvement in the community? So one way that we kind of over-invest in community is, again, by bringing those local partnerships in. Okay. We partner with local coffee shops, so you have really good coffee when you come to stay with us. We partner with local food purveyors. Again, we mentioned the artists, et cetera, but the goal is, should the community walk in and say you captured us, we've done our job.
Okay. So 500 units in a dozen U.S. cities so far. And you got an investment from Airbnb earlier this year, which sort of is a vote of confidence, right?
We did.
So part of what I hear is it does seem like the design element could be a little bit niche. Do you feel like this can really scale and go mainstream?
Interesting. Niche in the sense of there's only a certain number of people willing to pay for good design or good experiences. First of all, we're seeing the mainstreaming of this entire industry right now. I think what we'll see is you'll eventually see the emergence of all sorts of players, just like in the hotel space. You have the Best Westerns of the world, fantastic business model.
Right.
You have the Four Seasons of the world, fantastic business model. I think Lyric is trying to say that the position we're trying to stake out is really on that high end of quality. Okay. I don't think it'll be a niche product. I think time will tell. Obviously, we're small relative to any major hotel player out there, but we're investing around the idea that this is going to be a pretty big thing.
Okay. And on the revenue management side, you were previously a CEO and co-founder of Beyond Pricing. So and now Lyric also has this revenue management service. There's a category of services that are out there trying to help property managers set rates. Do you see, where do you see that market sort of shaking out?
Sure. So obviously really interesting space where it's evolved from a pure kind of software and pricing perspective is when kind of the early pricing systems in our place were really looking at totally heterogeneous supply, right? Okay. Every single room was different. What we've seen with Lyric, Sonder, and others is now we're starting to see homogeneous supply emerge, where you start to have hotel pricing models that are also equally interesting. So one aspect of how that's evolving is we're seeing kind of the evolution of new pricing engines, pricing models. I think your questions are also around kind of consolidation or other things like that.
It's kind of implied.
Yeah, my thesis is that pricing always has to sit outside of the marketplace. Professional supply will never hand pricing controls over to a marketplace. We build and sell our own pricing software. Within revenue management, as soon as a dominant revenue management strategy emerges, it actually makes sense to have a different pricing strategy to price against that dominant revenue strategy. So it's kind of an interesting I would say, permanent opportunity space. So I don't see too much consolidation. I see more, and if there is consolidation, the natural reaction would be to launch a new player.
And your brand is Wheelhouse in that space?
It is, yes.
Okay. And you mentioned now that you feel that the alternative space is sort of ready to go mainstream, is your thesis?
100%.
We have someone else we'd like to invite on stage who also has an opinion about alternative coming mainstream. If we could hear from the CEO of Kayak, Steve Hafner, come on stage, please. Shake his hand. Appreciate it.
Andrew, thanks for letting me crash. I appreciate it. I think you guys are probably expecting Beyonce. Sorry, it's just me.
So what do you have? What's on your mind, Steve?
Yeah. So today we're announcing the launch of Kayak Premium accommodations and experiences, and Lyric is our first partner for that.
Okay.
And the idea behind Kayak Premium is a consumer can now come to Kayak and see Kayak badged or endorsed experiences and rooms that they can book.
Okay. Does this mean that you're like curating inventory? Because classically, you've always been aggregating more is more.
Absolutely. So at Kayak, we've always been focused on showing consumers all their options. The tricky thing about the short-term rental market is there isn't a brand out there that talks about consistency and great amenities and perks and thoughtful design. And we are very interested in creating that, or helping to create that, which is why we partnered with Andrew.
Okay. Will it just be companies like Lyric in the short-term rental space, or you'll branch into other categories?
The idea is to have Kayak endorsements across all types of accommodations and experiences. So we'll start with STM or STR. We'll move into boutique hotels, and then we're thinking about flights as well.
Okay. Is there, when we were talking backstage, you mentioned that there might be some functionality in the Kayak app. Is there some additional things coming down the line?
Yeah. So it's not just about helping a consumer choose the right travel option, but it's also, while you're in your trip, providing a great tech-forward experience. So we're working very hard with Andrew's team to make sure that the Kayak app, you can actually check in, check out, set the AC of the room, order from folks like OpenTable, and do other stuff like that.
So if you were a Kayak user, you would be able to use the Kayak app to check into Andrew's property at Lyric, is that right?
Seamlessly, yeah.
Okay, all right. So let's do some thought leadership here. We were talking about meta search is what Kayak is specialty in. There's different approaches to that. Home2Go is a pure play company. Do you feel like pure play has legs, or do you feel like the Kayak approach of blended is the way to go?
I think Wolfgang, who runs Home2Go, is a great friend of mine, former Kayak alumnus rather. I think the travel market is big enough to accommodate all types of niches. I just know from our vantage point at Kayak, we're doing 6 billion consumer queries a year. So if we can endorse a property like Lyric and get consumers to feel comfortable using that versus a Hilton, where you know what you're going to get, not very good, but you know what you're going to get, that there's a path forward for that.
Okay. So Andrew, you've got an investment from Airbnb, you've got this marquee partnership with Kayak, but sometimes getting your properties displayed in the way that you want, to have the inventory in a way that you would like, might be a challenge because you have such a unique story. So how do you see that shaking out about the development, your relationship with online aggregators?
Yeah. I mean, I think, look, one of the things that I like to say about Lyric is in the business of selling 24 photos.
Okay.
right? The way you sell a hotel room in the past is a little bit boring, right? You're selling a bed and a television, and it's just not a very photo-worthy product. And we are in the era where Instagram is driving consumer preferences and shopping patterns and all of that, right? So I think there are really interesting ways to merchandise the supply, because when you're selling 24 photos, really that's translating into we're selling experiences, and we're trying to tell our consumers, our customers, a story about what you will get via those photos. Could merchandising be taken to another level? Absolutely, absolutely. I think we'll see over probably across the marketplaces, across independent folks like us, we will see new merchandising models emerge where they will be very immersive and interesting and potentially interactive, but we're just at the early innings of that, right?
Okay. Trying to display hotels and alternative lodgings, there are different products, and so Kayak is trying to sort of figure out the way that the consumers can do this. How far along in the process are you? Are you like happy where conversion is happening right now, or do you have a lot more tinkering to do?
We have a lot more tinkering to do, and so does everybody else in the space. And you know, it's one thing to ask a consumer to tell you explicitly, hey, I'm interested in non-hotel accommodations. It's another to observe their search parameters and their past interactions with your site, and actually just nudge the search results and tilt them one direction or another. And that's probably where we are right now.
So there's a potential here for, a lot of consumers have this expectation of on-demand in every other aspect of their life. So whether it's Uber, ordering, and food. And so when they come to the hotel space, they don't necessarily need the whole full service, disagree with me if you want, Andrew. They don't need the whole full service suite. They might want to have order their Uber or order their, go to Grab and get some food or something. Do you feel like Open Table, that integration with Kayak, that's part of the approach of having with online demand is there?
So I think you're nibbling at the idea of super apps versus dedicated apps, and I think the ecosystem is going to work both ways. And I think at least in the U.S., my iPhone's a super app. So it's great to have Kayak standalone, and maybe Lyric someday will have an app, and Open Table standalone. But yeah, you'll be able to order a restaurant from Kayak, but I think you're more likely to order that restaurant or delivery from Open Table. But we'll do both.
Can I hop in to add something to that too? So I think there's like what you're getting at too with like a hotel, you obviously have room service, et cetera. The ancillary revenue lines off of short-term rentals is just emerging as well, right? So the idea, like it will look different, it will probably borrow from the past a little bit, right? So we're not interested in room service, but we are interested in things like grocery delivery. Okay. So you have a different floor plate to sell a different amenity or kind of ancillary profile. I think that's going to be Lyric is not there yet. We're crossing the threshold of being able to offer maybe some interesting things, but I think we'll borrow from hotels. It'll look different.
Okay. One change with this new model with Kayak is that a lot of times metasearch is getting a slice of the commission, and in this way, I would imagine that the Premier you're getting a bigger slice because you're partnering to give better brand promotion. Is that broadly true?
Yeah, we're not doing it for the money. I mean, you negotiate a tight deal, but for us, it's more about the consumer experience and taking this inventory that we think is really unique and awesome, and trying to give consumers comfort that they should book it. Because we think that once they book it, they'll actually come back directly to us, and it'll be a viral product. So it's less about the unit economics than it is about consumer engagement and making the market much bigger.
Okay, and how international is the approach with Kayak right now? Are you trying to get more rental? When you do Kayak Premium, are you going to be trying to expand that all over the globe?
It'll be global. It'll be a global program for us. So all verticals, all types of accommodations and experiences, and as mentioned, even flights. Lyric is our first partner. Not to say that we're going to do that at the exclusion of everyone else, but Andrew, right now I think you have 570 keys, something like that, 12 cities, all domestic. We want him to grow his business into all of our markets.
And Andrew, what's your plans do you have international growth plans, or are you going to concentrate in North America?
2020 is North America.
Okay.
Focus, we love it. Super interesting for us. We're still focused on making sure that product we put out the door is high quality. I think pushing international is interesting, but we also want to grow and focus on quality at the kind of, that's of paramount importance, I should say.
Okay. So Steve, Booking.com, your partner Olivier was here speaking earlier, and Booking.com has sort of always had a lot of inventory. He made his point across the spectrum, but they've really been ramping up the rentals. So they're coming from the rental side. Airbnb is sort of like now trying to bring hotels in on the other side. Do you feel there's any like structural challenges of like when a brand has already been established for rentals and you're trying to get other people's R's, headwinds? Is there anything you think of that it's just going to be just as easy to add rentals when you're a hotel brand as it is to go the other direction?
It's absolutely really hard to flex your brand into new verticals. You know, if you're lucky enough to get known by consumers for something, getting known for more than that thing is tough. So kayak, most people will associate with flights. The reality is most of our business is actually hotels.
In terms of revenue? Or?
In terms of revenue. Yeah, nobody makes money on flights. Yeah, so I think Booking's challenge will be they're known for hotels, even though they have all these other types of alternative accommodations. Airbnb is known for distinct experiences. It's going to be hard for Airbnb to flog, Marriott hotels when they're known for like igloos.
Mm-hmm. Is there a challenge, Andrew, when you have an investment from Airbnb, you've got a partnership with Kayak? How do you keep all the online demand aggregators happy?
Like how are we friends with multiple folks?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's that hard. I think you're respect each other's businesses and you're transparent as much as you can possibly be. And look, Airbnb is an investor. They're rooting for our success. They're an amazing partner as well. We will partner with other companies, just like Kayak will partner with other companies, just like Airbnb will partner with other companies. I think the fun part about travel, or kind of the interesting thing, is it's a small enough category where we all know each other. Mm-hmm. It's a big enough category where multiple things can emerge and multiple patterns are successful. So yeah, I would say be transparent, be friendly, and try to do good.
Yeah, so it's a big industry, but it's a key party.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that's on the minds of a lot of people in this room for the past 24 hours is the news at Expedia Group that they've had a change in the leadership management. Do you have any thoughts about what direction that they should do? Any advice to the new people coming over there?
I do. This is probably not the right forum for it, but I would say in the travel industry, there's a lot of shift and transition going on, and the biggest player in the space on the consumer demand layer is Google. And they're finally starting to get their act together. And they're in the business of selling off consumer referrals, and all the companies that were reliant on getting free referrals from Google, that's going to go away. And for a lot of those companies, if you dissect it from revenue and profit, it's a small part of their revenue, but it's half or more of their profit. Mm-hmm. So they're all in a tough spot, and I suspect there will probably be some more CEO turnovers. Hopefully not at Kayak, but at other companies.
It's a problem that's been long in coming. So is the solution that Kayak is trying to build the brand and you try to get people to come direct? Is that the way out of the Google?
Well, look, Kayak is innovated with price comparison. Well, that's kind of old hat these days, mm-hmm. right? And we're an intermediary, and the world's best intermediary is Google. So it behooves us now to make that transition and be thoughtful about it, to be closer to the principal experience and actually help people not just find the right travel option, but actually while they're on their trip to help them mm-hmm. and make that travel a bit easier. And the partnership with Lyric and other folks is all designed about, well, if I can book this room on Google or I can book it direct with another third party and that third party's app helps the travel experience, then we want consumers to do that. And I think it'll take Google a while to catch up to that.
Andrew, how important is brand building for Lyric in terms of spending and marketing and such?
So far, it has not been a priority to go spend on our direct marketing. Mm-hmm. We've really looked for a couple of signals before we think we're ready to do that kind of en masse. One is repeat rate, other is NPS or review scores. I think fair to say that we're confident in the quality we're putting out the door. We ran our first major experiments last week. I think they're really interesting. Mm-hmm. So we'll continue to invest in that. But historically, it's like when you're delivering a hospitality product, you're really obviously selling quality. Mm-hmm. Again, like we're in the business of selling clean rooms. Right. Can you make sure every room is clean, accessible, et cetera, those table stakes? I think we're good enough now to start progressing into direct marketing pretty substantially.
Okay. Last question I'll ask Andrew is, I asked earlier in a way of Sonder, which is the market right now, there's sort of a demand-supply mismatch, and so that has allowed very fatter margins than there might be a couple of years down the line, and it involves a lot of arbitrage in relationship with some of the developers and partners that you might have. How do you feel like Lyric is positioned to manage risk over the next couple of years?
I think Lyric is very interested in the management model. If you wanted to win in the management model, you'd look for privileged partnerships to help you sell inventory, and you'd create a really high-quality brand.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that makes sense. I'd like to thank my guests so much for being on stage. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Steve, for joining us.
Thanks again.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Steve. Appreciate it.